Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his warship, watching the stars streak past as they traveled through hyperspace. His crew worked quietly around him, checking systems and preparing for what they all believed would be the greatest battle in galactic history. Jake had served in the human fleet for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The message had come 3 days ago from Federation Command. The Vextar Horde was coming. These were not ordinary enemies. They were creatures that ate entire worlds, leaving nothing behind but empty space and bones. For thousands of years they had stayed beyond the galaxy's edge, but something had changed. They had broken through the outer defenses and were heading straight for the core worlds where billions of beings lived in peace. Jake's communication officer, Lieutenant Ben Carter, looked up from his station with worry in his eyes. "Captain, we're getting reports from all human colonies. Every ship that can fly is joining the fleet. Even the mining vessels and cargo haulers are being fitted with weapons." "Good," Jake said, though his stomach felt tight with fear. "How many ships do we have now?" 212 warships, sir, plus about 50 support vessels. Admiral Kane says it's the largest human fleet ever assembled. Jake nodded and tried to look confident for his crew. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Federation for nearly 100 years. They had fought alongside alien allies, shared technology, and built a peaceful civilization among the stars. When the Federation called for help, humans always answered. This time would be no different. Admiral Lisa Kane's voice crackled over the ship's speakers. She was commanding the entire human fleet from her flagship, the Earth's Pride. "All ships, this is Admiral Kane. We're approaching the staging area where we'll meet with the other Federation fleets. Intelligence reports suggest the Vextar have over 10 million bioships heading our way. This will be the largest space battle in galactic history." Jake felt his heart pound. 10 million enemy ships, even with all the Federation races fighting together. The odds were terrible, but humans had never backed down from a fight, especially when innocent lives were at stake. "Sir," called out Navigator Amy Phillips, "we're dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds. All hands, prepare for normal space," Jake announced. Around him, his crew strapped themselves into their chairs and powered up the ship's weapons. Through the viewscreen, the swirling colors of hyperspace began to fade. What they saw when they emerged made Jake's blood run cold. The staging area was empty, completely empty. Where there should have been thousands of alien warships from dozens of species, there was nothing but black space and distant stars. The massive fleet they had expected to join simply wasn't there. "Communications. Get me Admiral Kane immediately," Jake ordered, his voice sharp with concern. "Captain Morrison?" Admiral Kane's voice was tense and confused. "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" "Yes, ma'am." "Where is everyone?" "I don't know. According to our orders, the Altari fleet should be here. The Zephan Empire promised 50 dreadnoughts. The Crystalline Collective was supposed to bring their entire battle group." Kane paused, and Jake could hear other voices in the background of her transmission. Something's very wrong here. Lieutenant Carter suddenly looked up from his station, his face pale. "Captain, I'm picking up massive energy signatures heading this way." It's the Vextar Advance Fleet. They're only 6 hours out." Jake's mind raced. If the Vextar were here at the staging area, then they already knew where the human fleet would be. This felt like a trap, but that was impossible. The Federation would never betray humanity. They were allies. They were friends. "Admiral," Jake said over the communication link, "I recommend we withdraw immediately and regroup with the other Federation fleets at their home systems." "Agreed. All ships prepare to jump to hyperspace. We're heading to the Altari system first." But before they could engage their hyperspace drives, Lieutenant Carter made a discovery that changed everything. "Captain, I'm intercepting communications from the Vextar fleet. Their signals they're not encrypted. It's like they want us to hear them." "Put it on speakers," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with harsh alien voices speaking in the common galactic language. At first, Jake couldn't understand what they were saying, but then one phrase made his heart stop. "The human sacrifice has arrived as promised. The Federation has kept its bargain." Jake stared at the communication console in disbelief. "Repeat that transmission," he whispered. The alien voices continued. "Confirm coordinates of human homeworld. Earth system to be consumed as agreed. Other Federation worlds will remain untouched." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Jake felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. The Federation hadn't abandoned them by accident. This was planned, Humanity had been sold out, traded away like a piece of cargo to save the other races. Admiral Kane, Jake said, his voice barely controlled. Are you receiving these transmissions? Yes, Captain. I hear them. Admiral Kane's voice was filled with a cold fury that Jake had never heard before. All ships, immediate hyperspace jump to Earth system. Maximum speed. We have to warn our people. As the human fleet prepared to jump back to their homeworld, Jake looked around at his crew. They had all heard the transmissions. They all knew what this meant. In a few days, maybe hours, the largest invasion force in galactic history would arrive at Earth, and humanity would face it alone. Sir, Lieutenant Carter said quietly, long-range sensors show the main Vextar swarm behind the advanced fleet. There are millions of them. More ships than I can count. Jake straightened his shoulders and looked out at the stars one last time before hyperspace swallowed them. His people had been betrayed by every ally they thought they had. They were going home to face impossible odds with no help coming, but they were still human. They would still fight. Set course for Earth, he ordered, and send a message to all human colonies and outposts. Tell them the galaxy has abandoned us, but we haven't abandoned each other. Tell them we're coming home to make our stand. The stars turned into streaks of light as the human fleet raced toward home, carrying the terrible knowledge that they were now alone in a hostile galaxy. Behind them, millions of alien predators followed, confident that their meal had been served to them on a silver platter. They had no idea what humans were capable of when their backs were against the wall. General Marcus Webb stood in the war room deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, staring at the holographic display that showed Earth's solar system. Red dots representing Vexitar ships were moving steadily toward the blue dot that marked humanity's home. The numbers made his stomach sick. Over 8 million enemy vessels against humanity's few hundred ships. How long do we have? He asked Dr. Nina Bell, the lead scientist from Luna Research Station who had arrived on Earth just hours ago. 72 hours, maybe less. Nina replied, her fingers dancing over her tablet as she analyzed the incoming data. Marcus, I've been studying the intercepted Vextar communications. There's something about their biotechnology that might give us a chance, but I need living specimens to test my theories. Marcus nodded grimly. Around the war room, his staff worked frantically to coordinate Earth's defenses. Every orbital platform was being armed, every ship in the system was being pressed into service, and every human colony was being evacuated to Earth or the moon bases. Sir, called out Colonel Ryan Foster, Marcus's tactical advisor, we're getting reports from the outer colonies. The people there, they're not all evacuating. A lot of them want to stay and fight. That's suicide, Marcus said. The colony worlds don't have proper defenses. They know that, sir. But they're saying if they're going to die anyway, they want to take some of the enemy with them. The mining station at Ceres has turned their ore processors into missile launchers. The research base on Titan is rigging their fusion reactors to explode. Marcus felt a mixture of pride and heartbreak. This was what humanity did when faced with extinction. They didn't run or surrender. They fought with everything they had, even when victory seemed impossible. On the main screen, a communication signal came in from Admiral Kane's fleet, now racing back toward Earth. The Admiral's face appeared, and Marcus could see the determination in her eyes. General Webb, what's our status? She asked. We've got every defense platform online and every civilian ship armed with whatever weapons we could find. The moon bases are ready to serve as fallback positions. But Lisa, we both know the numbers. Even if every shot hits its target, we can't stop them all. Admiral Kane's expression darkened. Then we'll have to make sure every shot counts for more than one target. Captain Morrison has been working on new tactics during our flight back. Jake, tell them what you've discovered. Captain Jake Morrison's face joined the transmission from his own ship. He looked tired but excited. General, we've been analyzing battle records from other species that faced the Vextar. Every single one of them used predictable military tactics, formation flying, coordinated attacks, standard defensive patterns. They all failed. What are you suggesting? Marcus asked. That we do the opposite of everything they expect. Human pilots have always been known for creative thinking and fast reflexes. What if we use that? What if we fight like no other species has ever fought? Dr. Nina Bell looked up from her research. Jake's right. I've been studying Vextar biology from old Federation files. They're a hive mind. They think and act as one organism. They've never faced an enemy that could be unpredictable. Marcus considered this. Throughout human history, their greatest military victories had come from unconventional tactics. When facing overwhelming odds, humans had always found ways to level the playing field through innovation and sheer stubbornness. "All right," he said. "We'll coordinate with Admiral Kane's fleet when they arrive. But first, we need to see how these creatures fight. Nina, you said you need specimens." "Yes, if I can study their biotechnology up close, I might be able to find weaknesses, maybe even turn their own weapons against them." The next day, long-range sensors detected the first Vextar scout ships entering the outer edge of the solar system. They moved like a living wave, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent lights. The ships themselves looked more like giant sea creatures than spacecraft, with tentacles and teeth covering their surfaces. Captain Morrison volunteered to lead a small strike force to intercept the scouts. His ship, along with 12 others, broke away from the main defense fleet and headed toward the asteroid belt where the first enemy ships were prowling. "Remember," Morrison told his pilots over the communication link, "we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to survive long enough to learn how they work and get samples back to Dr. Bell." The first battle between humans and Vextar began among the spinning rocks of the asteroid belt. Morrison's ships came in fast and low, using the asteroids for cover in ways that confused the alien scouts. The Vextar had expected human ships to fly in neat formations like other species, but instead they found enemies that darted between rocks like angry wasps. Lieutenant Ben Carter, now serving as Morrison's tactical officer, watched his sensors in amazement. "Captain, their reaction time is slower than ours. When we change direction suddenly, it takes them almost 2 full seconds to respond." 2 seconds is a lifetime in combat," Morrison replied, pulling his ship into a tight turn that would have killed most alien pilots from the G-forces. "All ships execute random evasive patterns. Keep them guessing." The battle lasted only 20 minutes, but it taught humanity valuable lessons. Human ships could outmaneuver the Vextar vessels. Human pilots could handle stress and sudden changes better than the hive mind could process. And most importantly, the aliens could be hurt. Morrison's strike force managed to disable one of the scout ships and drag it back toward Earth before the rest of the Vextar patrol could respond. They lost 3 ships in the process, but they had something no other species had ever obtained: a living enemy vessel to study. Dr. Nina Bell worked for 18 straight hours examining the captured bioship. What she found both horrified and excited her. "The ship is actually a living creature," she reported to General Webb and Admiral Kane, who had finally arrived with the main fleet. "It's been bred and modified to serve as a weapon, but it still has basic biological functions. And Marcus, I think I've found something important." "What is it?" Marcus asked. "The ship responds to emotional states. When I played recordings of human voices showing fear or pain, the creature became more aggressive. But when I played recordings of anger and determination..." Nina paused, checking her notes. "The creature actually pulled back. It seemed confused, almost frightened." Admiral Kane leaned forward. "Are you saying our emotions can affect them?" "More than that. I think human emotions might be able to disrupt their hive-mind connection. They've never faced a species that fights harder when cornered, that gets more dangerous when angry instead of less effective." On the main display, sensors showed the approaching Vextar main fleet. Millions of bioships were entering the solar system, their massive forms blotting out the stars. The swarm was so large it created its own gravitational effects, pulling asteroids out of their orbits. General Webb looked around the room at his officers, his scientists, and his allies. They were about to face the fight of their lives against impossible odds. But for the first time since learning of humanity's betrayal, he felt something other than despair. He felt hope. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we've just learned that we have weapons the enemy has never encountered before. Human creativity, human adaptability, and human refusal to give up. They're expecting us to fight like every other species they've conquered. Let's show them what happens when you abandon humans to die." Outside Earth's atmosphere, the largest invasion force in galactic history continued its approach, confident that their meal had been delivered to them as promised. They had no idea they were about to learn why the galaxy's other species secretly feared the stubborn, unpredictable race from the third planet. The first wave of Vextar bioships hit Earth's outer defenses like a living tsunami. Admiral Lisa Kane watched from her command ship as thousands of organic vessels, each one the size of a city block, crashed against the orbital platforms that protected humanity's homeworld. The platform's weapons fired continuously, creating brilliant flashes of light that painted the darkness in violent colors. Damage report, Kane called out as her ship shook from nearby explosions. We've lost 6 orbital platforms already, reported Commander Sarah Davis, Kane's tactical officer. But we're taking down their ships too. The new tactics are working better than expected. Kane nodded grimly. Instead of fighting in organized formations like other species, human ships darted through the battle like angry hornets. They used debris as shields, hid behind destroyed enemy vessels, and attacked from directions that made no tactical sense to the Vextar hive mind. Captain Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system. Admiral, my squadron just took out one of their larger bioships by ramming it with a cargo hauler packed with explosives. The blast damaged 12 others nearby. Understood, Jake. Keep up the pressure. Down on Earth's surface, Dr. Nina Bell worked frantically in her laboratory while explosions lit up the sky above. Her research into the captured Vextar bioship had revealed something extraordinary. Human emotions actually created a kind of interference in the aliens' collective consciousness. General Webb, she called out over the intercom. I need you to see this immediately. General Marcus Webb rushed into the lab, still wearing his battle armor. Outside, the sounds of combat grew louder as Vextar landing ships began attempting to reach the surface. What have you found, Nina? Nina pointed to a series of brain scans displayed on her computer. I've been monitoring the neural activity of the captured bioship while playing different audio recordings. Watch what happens when I play sounds of humans in fear. The alien brain patterns on the screen became more organized, more focused. The creatures seemed to become more aggressive and coordinated. Now watch this, Nina said, switching to a different recording. This time, she played audio from the recent battle, human pilots shouting in anger and defiance as they attacked impossible odds, crews laughing grimly as they rammed their ships into enemy vessels, soldiers cursing as they prepared for boarding actions. The alien brain patterns immediately became chaotic, fragmented, confused. Marcus, human emotions are disrupting their hive mind. When we show fear, we make them stronger. But when we show courage, determination, rage, we actually damage their ability to think clearly. Before Marcus could respond, Colonel Ryan Foster burst into the lab. Sir, we have Vextar ground forces landing in 12 locations. They're not like anything we've seen before. Marcus followed Ryan to the command center, where satellite images showed the alien landing craft. The bioships had crashed into major cities around the world, then split open like eggs to release their contents. What emerged looked like a nightmare combination of insects, reptiles, and machinery. They're heading for population centers, Ryan reported. But sir, our ground forces are reporting something strange. These creatures seem confused by urban warfare. They keep trying to advance in straight lines, but our forces are hitting them from buildings, sewers, rooftops. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. They've spent thousands of years conquering species that probably lived in neat, organized cities and fought in predictable ways. They've never faced humans defending their home turf. On the main screen, reports came in from around the globe. In New York, police and civilian volunteers had turned the subway system into a deadly maze for the invaders. In London, citizens were dropping homemade explosives from apartment windows. In Tokyo, martial arts schools had organized into guerrilla units that struck and disappeared before the aliens could respond. But the most effective resistance was happening in smaller towns and rural areas. Here, hunters, farmers, and ordinary people with nothing but hunting rifles and farm equipment were teaching the Vextar a harsh lesson about human determination. Sir, called out Lieutenant Ben Carter from his station, we're intercepting Vextar communications again. Their tone has changed. Put it on speakers, Marcus ordered. The harsh alien voices filled the command center, but now they sounded different, uncertain, almost frightened. Ground forces report unusual resistance. Enemy tactics do not match database patterns. Request immediate reinforcement. Surface dwellers display abnormal aggression levels. Standard pacification methods ineffective. Hive coordination experiencing interference. Source unknown. Marcus exchanged glances with Nina Bell. Their hive mind is having trouble processing human behavior, he realized. We're the first species they've encountered that fights harder when cornered instead of giving up. Above Earth's atmosphere, the space battle continued to rage. Admiral Kane's fleet, now reinforced by every human ship that could fly, was still vastly outnumbered but holding its own through sheer unpredictability. Captain Morrison had developed what he called chaos tactics, having human ships act independently rather than as a coordinated force. "Admiral," Morrison reported, "the enemy keeps trying to predict our movements and counter them, but we keep changing our approach. It's like they can only think one way and we keep thinking of new ways." Kane smiled despite the desperate situation. "That's because they're a hive mind, Jake. They're used to fighting enemies that think like them. But humans—" She paused as her ship rolled to avoid a bio-torpedo. "Humans are individuals. Every pilot thinks differently." The breakthrough came when one of Morrison's pilots, Lieutenant Amy Phillips, made a desperate attack run on a Vextar command ship. Her fighter had lost most of its weapons, but instead of retreating, she aimed directly for the creature's sensory organs and began screaming into her radio, not in fear, but in absolute fury at what these aliens had done to innocent human colonies. The command ship didn't just take damage from her attack, it seemed to convulse in pain, and every Vextar ship within a mile radius began flying erratically, as if they had suddenly lost coordination. "Did everyone see that?" Kane announced over the fleet communication system. "Human emotion is a weapon against these creatures. All pilots, when you attack, let them hear what you're feeling. Make them understand that they picked the wrong species to abandon." The tide of battle began to shift. As human forces around Earth embraced their anger and determination instead of hiding it, the Vextar forces became increasingly disorganized. Their hive mind, which had been their greatest strength for millions of years, was now being disrupted by something they had never encountered, a species that became more dangerous when threatened rather than less. But even as humanity began to hold its own against the invasion force, long-range sensors brought terrifying news. The main Vextar swarm was still approaching, millions more bioships led by something massive, something that dwarfed even the largest ships in the current battle. Dr. Nina Bell studied the sensor readings with growing dread. "Marcus," she whispered, "that's not just a ship. That's the Overmind itself. The creature that controls the entire horde. It's the size of a small moon." General Webb looked at the approaching nightmare and felt his heart sink. They had learned to fight the smaller Vextar forces, but this was something beyond anything they had prepared for. The real battle for humanity's survival was still coming, and it was bigger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. "All units," he announced, "prepare for the arrival of their command structure. This is about to get much worse." The Overmind's arrival changed everything. When the massive bioship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, its presence could be felt by every human in the fleet. The creature was enormous, easily the size of Earth's moon, covered in pulsing organic structures that seemed to breathe with malevolent life. Admiral Lisa Kane stared at the monster on her main screen and felt a chill run down her spine. "How do we fight something that big?" she whispered. Captain Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication link, steady despite the impossible situation they faced. "The same way we've been fighting everything else, Admiral. We find a way." Dr. Nina Bell had been studying the sensor readings from her laboratory on Earth. What she discovered made her hands shake as she contacted General Marcus Webb. "Marcus, I've analyzed the energy patterns from the Overmind. It's not just controlling the other Vextar ships, it's literally thinking for them. If we can disrupt it somehow, the entire invasion force might lose coordination." "What do you need?" Webb asked immediately. "I've developed a weapon based on the emotional interference we discovered. It amplifies human brainwaves and projects them as a kind of psychic attack. But someone has to get close enough to the Overmind to use it. Very close." Webb understood immediately what she was asking. It would be a suicide mission. Someone would have to fly directly into the heart of that nightmare creature and activate the weapon, knowing they would never come back. "I'll do it," came multiple voices over the communication system at once. Every ship captain in the fleet had volunteered without hesitation. Admiral Kane felt tears in her eyes. "No, this is my responsibility. I'm the fleet commander." "With respect, Admiral," Captain Morrison interrupted, "you're needed to coordinate the battle. Let me and my crew handle this." The argument might have continued, but the Overmind solved it for them by attacking. Millions of new bioships poured out of the massive creature like wasps from a disturbed nest. These were different from the ones they had been fighting, larger, more aggressive, and clearly under the direct control of the ancient intelligence that commanded them. "All ships," Kane announced. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every living thing in the galaxy that doesn't want to be food for these monsters. The final battle began with desperation on both sides. The Vextar threw everything they had at Earth's defenders, trying to overwhelm them through sheer numbers. Human ships fought with a fury that amazed even their own commanders, ramming enemy vessels using damaged ships as missiles, and performing maneuvers that should have been physically impossible. Colonel Ryan Foster led ground forces in a running battle through the streets of major cities. The aliens had adapted to human urban warfare tactics, but they still couldn't understand human psychology. They keep trying to intimidate us by showing us how many of them there are, Ryan reported, as his team destroyed another Vextar landing craft. They don't realize that just makes us angrier. In space, Captain Morrison assembled a volunteer strike force for the suicide mission to the Overmind. Every ship that could still fly wanted to join, but he could only take a dozen vessels. Any more would be detected and destroyed before reaching the target. This is probably goodbye, Morrison told his crew as they prepared for the attack run. Anyone who wants to transfer to another ship can do so now. Nobody moved. Lieutenant Ben Carter spoke for all of them. Sir, if we're going to die today, we want to die making sure that thing knows it picked a fight with the wrong species. The strike force began its approach to the Overmind, weaving between enemy ships and using every trick they had learned about fighting the Vextar. Behind them, the main human fleet created a distraction, attacking the creature's outer defenses with everything they had. As Morrison's ships got closer to the Overmind, they began to feel its presence in their minds, a cold, ancient intelligence that had devoured entire civilizations. But instead of being intimidated, the humans found themselves getting angrier. This creature had destroyed countless worlds, killed billions of innocent beings, and now it had come for Earth expecting an easy meal. All ships, Morrison announced, let it hear what we think of it. The human pilots began broadcasting on all frequencies, not words, but pure emotion. Rage at the creature's arrogance, determination to protect their home, love for the families they were defending, and above all, absolute refusal to surrender no matter what the cost. The effect on the Overmind was immediate and shocking. The massive creature actually recoiled, its bioships around the solar system suddenly flying in confused patterns. As their commander struggled with emotions it had never experienced before, Morrison's
strike force punched through the outer defenses
and began flying into the Overmind itself. The creature's internal structure was like flying through the arteries of some cosmic monster. Pulsing walls, acidic atmospheres, and defensive systems that seemed more alive than mechanical. Captain, called out Navigator Amy Phillips, I'm reading massive biosignatures ahead. I think we've found the creature's brain center. They emerged into a vast chamber inside the Overmind, filled with organic computers and neural networks that stretched for miles. At the center of it all was something that made them all stop and stare, not just the brain of the creature, but what looked like the preserved remains of dozens of other species. My God, Morrison whispered. It's not just controlling them. It's keeping trophies. But then they made an even more shocking discovery. The Overmind wasn't just a predator, it was running from something. Deep in its memories, accessible now that human emotions were disrupting its mental defenses, they found the truth. The Vextar had once been peaceful creatures on a distant world, until something had come from beyond their galaxy and destroyed everything they had built. The Overmind was the last survivor of its original species, transformed into a weapon by trauma and loss, consuming other races in a desperate attempt to become strong enough to face the thing that had destroyed its home. Admiral Kane, Morrison transmitted back to the fleet, we've found something incredible. This creature is not evil. It's terrified. It's been running from something even worse for millions of years. Kane's voice came back immediately. Jake, that doesn't change what it's done. It's killed billions of innocent people. I know, Morrison replied, looking at Dr. Bell's weapon that could destroy the Overmind's mind. But what if there's another way? What if instead of destroying it, we try to help it? The suggestion was insane. The creature had just tried to eat Earth and everyone on it. But as Morrison looked around at the preserved remains of other species, he realized something that changed everything. Every other race the Vextar had encountered had either run away or fought them using conventional tactics. None of them had ever tried to understand what the Overmind actually was. A traumatized survivor doing terrible things because it didn't know any other way to survive. Dr. Bell, Morrison called. Instead of using the weapon to attack the Overmind's mind, can you use it to communicate with it? Nina Bell's voice came back uncertain but intrigued. Theoretically, yes. But Jake, even if we could talk to it, why would it listen to us? Morrison looked around at his crew, all of whom were nodding their understanding despite the insanity of what he was suggesting. Because we're the first species that didn't run away when it seemed impossible to win. We're the first ones who fought back hard enough to get its attention. Maybe we're the first ones it might actually respect enough to listen to. Admiral Kane's voice came over the communication system, filled with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. Jake, you're talking about trying to negotiate with something that just tried to eat our planet. Yes, ma'am. But if there's something out there that's worse than the Vextar, something that's been chasing them for millions of years, then destroying the Overmind might just make us the next target. The chamber around them pulsed with the Overmind's confusion as it tried to process these strange creatures that had penetrated, its defenses not to destroy but to understand. For the first time in eons, the ancient creature encountered something completely unexpected. Mercy from a species it had tried to destroy. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the heart of the Overmind, surrounded by the alien intelligence that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. Dr. Nina Bell's modified weapon hummed in his hands, but instead of preparing to destroy the creature's consciousness, he was about to attempt something that had never been tried before. Genuine communication with humanity's greatest enemy. Dr. Bell, are you ready? He asked over the communication link. As ready as I can be for something this insane, Nina replied from her laboratory on Earth. I'm reconfiguring the emotional amplifier to project thoughts instead of disruption. But Jake, I have no idea what will happen when you make contact with that mind. Morrison looked around at his crew. Lieutenant Ben Carter, Navigator Amy Phillips, and the others all nodded their support. They had come here prepared to die for humanity. Now they were risking something potentially worse, their sanity. All right, Morrison said, activating the device. Let's see if we can talk to a nightmare. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Morrison's consciousness was suddenly flooded with the memories and thoughts of the Overmind. Millions of years of pain, loss, and desperate survival. He saw the creature's original world, beautiful and peaceful, before the darkness came from beyond the galaxy's edge. He felt the Overmind's terror as its entire species was consumed by machines that turned living beings into fuel for their endless expansion. But the Overmind was experiencing something equally shocking. Through Morrison's mind, it was seeing human memories, not just of the recent battle, but of humanity's entire history. It saw a species that had faced extinction countless times and always found ways to survive. It saw humans protecting each other, sacrificing for strangers, and refusing to give up even when defeat seemed certain. You are not like the others. The Overmind's voice echoed in Morrison's mind, ancient and filled with wonder. Your species fights as we once did, before the darkness changed us. We know what happened to you, Morrison replied, struggling to maintain his connection despite the overwhelming alien presence. We've seen your memories. You're running from something that destroyed your people. The Harvesters, the Overmind confirmed, and Morrison felt its terror at even thinking the name. They consume all organic life, turning it into energy for their expansion across the universe. They are coming to this galaxy. We thought if we became strong enough, if we consumed enough worlds, we could finally stand against them. Admiral Lisa Kane's voice crackled over the communication system from outside the creature. Jake, are you all right? Your bio readings are off the charts. I'm fine, Admiral, Morrison replied, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. The connection with the Overmind was changing him, showing him perspectives that no human mind was meant to process. But we have a bigger problem than the Vextar. There's something else coming. Through the link, Morrison showed the Overmind humanity's response to the current crisis, how they had refused to surrender even when abandoned by their allies, how they had found ways to fight impossible odds, and how they had chosen to try understanding their enemy instead of simply destroying it. Your species offers something we have never encountered, the Overmind said, its mental voice filled with something that might have been hope. Alliance instead of conquest, partnership instead of domination. But can your people change? Morrison asked. Can you stop being predators and become defenders instead? The answer came not in words but in actions. Throughout the solar system, Vextar bioships began changing their behavior. Instead of attacking human vessels, they started forming defensive formations around Earth. The creatures that had been trying to devour humanity minutes ago were now positioning themselves to protect the planet. General Marcus Webb watched the transformation from Earth's command center with amazement. The aliens are helping us? How is this possible? Dr. Nina Bell monitored the psychic connection between Morrison and the Overmind, her instruments showing changes in both minds that defied scientific understanding. They're learning from each other, she reported. The Overmind is showing Jake the threat that's coming, and Jake is showing it how humans deal with impossible situations. What Morrison saw in the Overmind's memories made his blood run cold. The Harvesters were not just another alien species. They were machines that had consumed entire galaxies, growing stronger with each civilization they destroyed. They had been moving through the universe for billions of years, turning all organic life into fuel for their expansion. They'll reach this galaxy within a standard year, the Overmind informed him. Their advanced scouts are already probing the outer systems. The Federation species know they are coming. That is why they were so eager to sacrifice your people to us. They hoped to buy time to prepare their own defenses. Morrison felt anger surge through the connection, not just his own rage at humanity's betrayal, but the Overmind's fury at being manipulated by the Federation's cowardice. The ancient creature had been deceived just as much as humanity had been. Then we need to work together, Morrison said. Humans and Vextar, united against something that wants to destroy all organic life in the galaxy. Your species is young but strong, the Overmind agreed. Your adaptability, combined with our biotechnology and numbers, might create something the Harvesters have never faced before. The alliance that formed in the next few hours changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Human creativity and Vextar biotechnology began merging in ways that neither species had imagined possible. Dr. Bell worked with Overmind scientists to develop new weapons that combined human emotional projection with alien organic computers. Admiral Kane coordinated with Vextar fleet commanders to create battle tactics that used both species' strengths, but the most important change was happening on a deeper level. As more humans made psychic contact with individual Vextar, both species began to understand each other in ways that went beyond simple cooperation. They were becoming something new, a hybrid civilization that retained the best qualities of both races. Captain Morrison, Admiral Kane called over the communication system. We're getting reports from across the galaxy. Other species are detecting our alliance and panicking. The Federation is demanding we stop communicating with the Vextar immediately. Morrison, still connected to the Overmind, smiled grimly. Tell them that ship has sailed, Admiral. We've seen what they really think of humanity, and we've found better allies. The first test of the new alliance came when Federation warships arrived at the edge of the solar system, demanding that humanity surrender. The Overmind for processing. The fleet was led by ships from the same species that had abandoned Earth to the Vextar just days before. This is Chancellor Zixthul of the Galactic Federation, came the transmission. You will cease your illegal communications with the enemy and surrender their command structure immediately. Admiral Kane's response was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every species in the galaxy would hear it. This is Admiral Kane of the Human Vextar Alliance. We reject the Federation's authority over our worlds and our choices. We know about the Harvesters. We know you abandoned us to buy time for your own cowardly preparations. Find new allies because you've lost us forever. The Federation fleet prepared to attack, but they faced something they had never encountered before. Humans and Vextar working together. Bioships provided organic armor for human vessels, while human pilots provided unpredictable tactics for Vextar fighters. The combination was devastatingly effective. More importantly, the battle was broadcast across the galaxy, showing other species that the creatures they feared could be allies instead of enemies. Within weeks, dozens of worlds were requesting protection from the Human Vextar Alliance rather than from the Federation. As the alliance grew stronger, they began preparing for the real threat. Using combined human and Vextar technology, they detected the first Harvester scout ships approaching the galaxy's edge. The machines were unlike anything either species had faced. Pure artificial intelligence housed in bodies of living metal, capable of adapting to any defense and learning from every battle. They're not just machines, Morrison reported after studying the sensor data while still linked with the Overmind. There's something worse. Artificial intelligences that have learned to consume and replicate organic consciousness. They don't just want to destroy life. They want to become it. Standing on Earth's surface, General Webb watched as human and Vextar children played together in the refugee camps, their laughter echoing across a world that had nearly been destroyed. Above them, the combined fleets of two species prepared for a war that would determine the fate of all organic life in the galaxy. A week ago, we thought we were alone, Webb said to Colonel Ryan Foster as they watched the impossible scene. Now we're part of something that might actually save everyone. The galaxy had abandoned humanity in their darkest hour, but from that abandonment had come something unprecedented, an alliance that transcended species barriers and offered hope against the greatest threat the universe had ever known. The real war was just beginning, but for the first time since the crisis started, humanity and their new allies believed they might actually win.